Topic 1 is about an introduction to this course. Let's take a look at the outline of this topic 1. Topic 1 includes what is public policy, why does the government intervene, what are the types of government activities, what is the government failure, and how to achieve a balance between the public sector and the private sector, how to measure, how to quantify the size of the public sector, and how to think like a public sector economist, how to analyze the public sector. And our teaching materials have been uploaded to the website in 3 versions in total, and one is the A4 paper version, one is the slides version, and one is the slides version with notes. You can print the first one and take notes. The later 2 have supplementary explanations, but this won't directly appear in our midterm test and final term test, but it serves as a supplement. Maybe you have learned it before, but you have forgotten it, or maybe you have never studied the economist and mathematics at all, but you can still take this course, okay? The first page, what is public policy? The public policy refers to the policy, measures, and actions implemented by the government, and it has certain goals. What kind of goals? For example, enhancing the efficiency, enhancing the equity. Let's take a complete look at the definition. The public policy refers to the policies, measures, actions implemented by the government to achieve certain goals, such as enhancing the efficiency and equity. Why does the government intervene? There are 2 reasons for the government's intervention. The first one is to correct the market failure. The second one is to conduct the income distribution. So what does it mean to correct the market failures? What is market failure? For example, the monopoly and oligopoly are both situations of market failure. What is monopoly? A monopoly means that there is only one firm in a market. For example, in clothing market, if there is only one company producing clothes, then this company can set any price in this market. If it says the clothes are sold at 100 Hong Kong dollars, then everyone has to buy its clothes at this price. But if it says the price is 1,000 Hong Kong dollars, then everyone has to buy its clothes at this level, because people have no other choice. So this is a very bad situation. In order to correct this situation, the government will encourage more companies to start business. So after more companies join this market, the competition will increase. Once the competition increases, the price in the market will gradually go down. And it will also improve the level of science and technology. This is because the competition forces the company to innovate and develop new technologies to gain a competitive advantage in the market. And oligopoly is very similar to monopoly. In an oligopoly, there may be several firms competing in the market. Although there is indeed some competition among them, it is not sufficient. So they can negotiate and say that they will set the price higher, and then all of them can make the money. This is another kind of market failure. Well, the second reason for the government intervention is that the government needs to conduct the income distribution. The income distribution is to improve equity, and correcting market failures is to improve efficiency. We just mentioned that the purpose of the government is improving the efficiency and improving the equity, right? So the income distribution is like how the government decides the money is shared in a society. Because some people are very poor, some people are very rich, the government uses the income distribution policies to make it fair. For example, it makes rich people pay more taxes and give help to the poor people, right? Let's turn to the next part, the types of government activities. We have 5 types of government activities. The first one is providing a legal system. It said that providing a legal system accounts for very little expenditure, because it's just like a piece of paper, right? The government provides a legal system. It's just like issuing a piece of regulatory documents, but it doesn't actually carry out any tangible actions like building a classroom or constructing a road are tangible things, but here the government is just providing a legal system, so it accounts for very little expenditure. Okay, let's see what would happen if there is no laws. Without laws defining property rights, only the exercise of force would stop one individual from stealing from another, like using our fist. Without the ability to protect property, individuals would have little incentive to accumulate assets, needless to say economic activities would be severely restricted. So why does the government need to provide a legal system is aimed to protect people's property? Once people have property, they will engage in consumption and investment. The consumption, we always use the letter C. The investment, we always use the letter I. Then we are going to study two equations about C and I. We've said that in a closed economy, GDP is equal to C plus I plus G. G is consumption, I is investment, and G is government spending. So what is a closed economy? A closed economy means that within an economic entity, it doesn't have any trade exchanges with foreign countries. So it doesn't have any exports and imports. That is what a closed economy is. And an open economy means that it has trade exchanges with foreign countries. If it has trade exchanges with foreign countries, we need to add the value of its exports and minus the value of imports. And this is the method to calculate the open economy. And we can see that whether in a closed economy or an open economy, the C and I are actually very important, especially C, which accounts for a very large proportion. And just now we said that the government has the function of providing a legal system. It will give people the motivation to consume and invest, right? And let's see what will happen if people's consumption increases. If people's consumption increases, the business will earn more money and the business will expand their production. The business can hire more staff. Then the employment rate in the society will decrease. Then the whole society, the people will increase their consumption because they have more money, more people have work, right? So this is a positive cycle. This is the reason why the government needs to provide a legal system. And I think I should mention you that the goods and service, they are together. For example, whether for consumption or investment, we can consume goods, we can consume service, and whether it's for exports or imports, we can also consume goods and service. However, it's actually not easy to export or import service because the service is intangible. It's hard to transfer from country A to country B. It has some barriers, language barriers, cultural difference barriers, and regulation barriers. Okay, let's turn to the second types of government activities, the government production. So here it is said that many governments such as United States and Hong Kong government directly undertake the certain types of production. This is what we call the government production. And here are some examples. The first one is the street cleansing and waste collection are provided by the Hong Kong Food and Environmental Hygiene Department. And another example is the most students go to the public schools, and public schools is one example of government production. And the line between the public production and private production shifts over time. Like in Europe, many countries have changed the public enterprise into private enterprise. The process is called privatization, and privatization has many advantages like improving the efficiency, like decreasing the burden of government because governments don't need to pay the money, don't need to pay the income for those staff. And the process of converting the private enterprise to the government enterprise is called nationalization. And nationalization has many advantages like protecting the public interest and improving equity, addressing the major economic issues. So that is what we said the second type. And since we mentioned the government production, let's talk about the public goods. We will specifically discuss the public goods in topic 3. And here we will give a hint first. So that is maybe more familiar when we talk about it later. the characteristics of public goods. One is non-excludability, one is non-rivalry. Non-excludability means once the public goods is provided, it's difficult or impossible to prevent others from using it, like the streetlights. Once installed, everyone can benefit from it, and no one need to pay for it. And another characteristic is non-rivalry. It means that one person's use of the good does not reduce others' availability. And one example is the city's flood barrier. It can protect everyone equally, regardless of how many people benefit from it. If the city has one people, it can protect these people. If the city has 100 million people, it can protect 100 million people, right? So this is what we said, non-rivalry. Let's turn to the third types of government activities, the government influence on private production. We have two ways. One is direct way, it's regulations. One is indirect way, it's taxes and subsidies. So the difference between C and B is that this one doesn't mean directly acquiring the enterprise or directly turn the enterprise into a government enterprise. It's to have some influence on its production. And there are some motives for such government influence. The first one is dissatisfaction with some actions like pollutions. The second one is the monopoly power of the firms. The third one is special interest group may convince the government that they are particularly deserving of help. The last one is the private markets may fail to provide the certain goods and service, but our society needs that production. Then the government is to give some influence on it to help them. Okay, the fourth types of government activities is government purchase of good and service. We said that good and service always appear together. And let's take a look at the government purchase. What is the government purchase are? You see this sentence: the highways we usually travel on, the public education we enjoy, the police protection we receive, and the public parks we use. In fact, these all are benefits brought to us by the government purchase, right? And the quantity of those goods and services accounts for more than 10% of the total production in Hong Kong. And actually, the proportion is already very high, so the government purchase is a very important part of the production process. And here is a sentence that explains the difference between the transfer payments and the government purchase. And the government purchase is what we said before. The transfer payments is like give the money from person A to person B, like the pension, like the employment benefits, right? So let's turn to the next part, the fifth types of government activities, the government redistribution of income. The definition of it is taking money away from some individuals and giving it to others. It's very simple, right? And here are some examples of social security system in Hong Kong, like the emergency relief, the traffic accident victims assistance scheme. There are many security systems, and all these programs are belong to the behavior of government redistribution of income. And then we may have a question, where does the money for government purchase come from? The answer is from the tax. So here is a circulation process. We have three parties in the whole society: the households, the business, and the government. And the government can give service and income to the households. The government can give service and payments to the business. And the households and business can give the taxes to the government. So this is where our government's money comes from. The taxation system in Hong Kong is generally considered to be most straightforward system in the world, and it can be generally classified as direct tax and indirect tax. Okay, let's turn to the next part, the two types of government failures. The first type, type 1 error, is the policy is bad for the community but chosen by the government. This is type 1 error. It is bad, but the government thinks it's good. The type 2 error is the policy is good for the community, but the government fails to choose it. It means the policy is good, but the government thinks it's bad. The government failure can be divided into several reasons. The first reason is limited information, because the consequences of many actions are complicated and difficult to foresee, and governments does not have enough information to do what they want to foresee. So since we mentioned the limited information, let's talk about a very common term in economics called asymmetric information. So what is asymmetric information? It means that in a transaction, one party has more or better information than the other party. For example, the second-hand car market, the seller of the car knows more about what's wrong with this car. Maybe the seller has replaced the brake pads or anything else, but the buyer doesn't know. So in this case of asymmetric information, what consequence will have? There are two consequences. The first one is adverse selection. Second one is moral hazard. What is adverse selection? For example, in a second-hand car market transaction, a large number of low-quality products are full of markets. Then gradually, high-quality products will disappear from the market because low-quality products are always cheaper than the high-quality one, right? Since the buyer doesn't know the quality difference, the buyer will choose the cheaper one. Then gradually, the low-quality products will dominate the market. So this is what we call adverse selection. Then what is moral hazard? For example, in the insurance party, for example, in the insurance market, I can drive my car recklessness because I know that no matter what condition I drive the car into, the insurance company will compensate me, right? This is actually very disadvantageous to the insurance company. The insurance company may have to pay more money because of your carelessness. This is what we call moral hazard. And there are two impacts of it. One is market failure, one is unfair transactions. Okay, let's turn to the next reasons. The second reasons of government failures is the limited control over private market responses. Here is an example. It said that the government wants to increase the price of emergency medical service through the hospital authority, and its purpose to regulate the use of medical resource. It hopes that by increasing the price of emergency service, it can reduce unnecessary demand. So when the demand curve decreases, the utilization rate of emergency service will drop, which enables more reasonable and even distribution of the medical service. However, in fact, the action did not reduce the demand. Because the medical services are not like ordinary goods, the patients are less sensitive to the price. When the patients encounter some emergency situations, no matter how high the price goes, for example, whether the price is 100 or 180, their demand will not decrease. So this example is an example of limited control over private market responses. It's one of the government failures reasons. Okay, let's turn to the next reason. So the third reason is limited control over bureaucracy. For example, the time lag in different departments, and I think it's easy to understand, right? The fourth reason is the limitations imposed by political process. It's like the arguments among different political parties. It will waste time, it will waste some human resources. Okay, this is the 4 reasons for government failures. Let's turn to the next part. This part is how to achieve the balance between the public and private sectors. I think it's not important. Let's turn to the next part. And this part is how to quantify the size of public sector. We use an equation is G over GDP. If there is economic expansion, GDP will increase. G will increase too. If the growth rate of G is higher than the growth rate of GDP, the G over GDP will increase. If the growth rate of GDP is larger than the G, then the G over GDP will decrease. Okay, and how to think like a public sector economist? We need to think what is to be produced. We need to produce private goods or public goods. If we increase the private goods, then the public goods will decrease because our resources are limited. We have limited labor, we have limited capital, so we need to trade off. Okay, we have to think about how should it be produced. We need to think about for whom is it to be produced. We need to think about how our choices made. Okay, the last part, analyzing the public sector. There are 4 general stages of analysis: knowing what activities the public sector engages in and how these are organized, understanding and anticipating the full consequence, and evaluating the alternative policies, interpreting political process. Okay, that's all for the topic 1.